It's that time of year, almost Halloween, so we know what that means. It is Michigan State week. It's the battle for Paul Bunyan, or as I like to call it now, it's the Donovan Dooley Bowl. Shout out to QBU. They train both of these quarterbacks. So for those who are not familiar with Donovan Dooley, get familiar. He's done a great job with both of these guys. But we will see which quarterback has gotten the most bang for their buck this weekend. Starting with Michigan State's offense. I am sorry, Sparties. I had to do it to you. When I went to find a Michigan State background and I saw this, I had to call my uncle, not Uncle T, my Uncle Chad, GPT. And he gave me this nice Michigan State background of whoever this is coming out of the deep end, as they say in East Lansing. Or was that just under Mel Tucker? I don't know. Either way, let's get into the film here as quickly as possible. Michigan State's offensive strengths, the Childs and Marsh connection. Everybody knows about it. It's legit, and it'll more than likely show up this Saturday. State has a very solid screen game and misdirection game, and you know you can expect that on steroids this week. And from a personnel standpoint, the running backs are very underappreciated, very good with even just a little bit of space, which is sometimes the problem. They've had very inconsistent run game, mostly due to missed assignments on the offensive line. There have been times where Childs has turned the ball over, making some questionable decisions. The pass protection has been below average, and for as good of a screen game as they have, the perimeter blocking has been inconsistent as well. And now on to Michigan's defense. You can check out the breakdown of the Washington game in this video on the top right, but we'll get right to it. When they rush 5, they've had some struggles. We all know that. When they rush 4, they've been very good. When they play gap sound football with basic cover 4, cover 3 type calls with some simulated pressures mixed in, they've created a run wall and they've had elite pass rush out of their front 4. They don't need anything from the second and third levels, and that's allowed them to cover up some holes in the back end. Speaking of which, those question marks I have, defending screens consistently. Yes, they improved against Washington coming out of the USC game, but there still are some issues there. Also defending 50-50 balls, which you know Childs is going to throw. And then they've had some past history struggling against the plus run game, that quarterback run game. You saw it against Oklahoma, a little bit against USC. They improved greatly against Washington, so they'll need to carry that going into this game against Childs, who can be a significant threat with his feet. So starting with Michigan State's backs, they have great vision, agility, and burst. You've seen flashes of it all year. They can be dangerous in open space. The only problem with that for Michigan State has been the inconsistency from the offensive line. Sometimes those opportunities have been few and far between. The offensive line constantly has missed assignments. Like sometimes when they block duo, their two double teams don't even seem to be on the same page with who's climbing to which linebacker. And then anytime they run wide zone or stretch, it's a crapshoot. It seems like it either hits for a decent gain or it's a tackle for loss. And it seems like it's a tackle for loss much more often than when it hits. So I think what Michigan State needs to do is rely heavily on the quarterback run game early and often. It is not a primary staple of their offense, but they do run it enough for it to be part of who they are. For reference, I'd compare it to Michigan's plus run game with Bryce, but maybe a little bit more often. We all know what Oklahoma did to Michigan in the quarterback run game, so even though Michigan has improved defending Q run, I do expect Michigan State to be more aggressive with adding that number in the run game with Childs this week. And then Michigan State's passing game has shown flashes as well. When Childs has a clean pocket, he can deliver the ball very well. He has a great connection with Marsh, but it's not just him. Number 1, Kelly had a great game at Indiana, and Childs has shown pretty good pocket presence and can make some great throws on the move as well. But that's when he starts to become a little more inconsistent. The pass protection has not been the greatest this year. Childs is constantly throwing under pressure, getting flushed out of the pocket, and there are times when he's made some questionable throws. He's going to really have to protect the ball if State is going to have any drop-back passing game, because if State's going to try to drop back pass that much, Michigan's pass rush could turn this into a really long night really quickly. Michigan's weakness, as I've said before, is when they rush 5 or more, it causes weaknesses in the back end and defending screens, which we'll get into in a second. But when Michigan rushes 4 against drop back and play action, they have consistently seen success getting to the quarterback. And you saw it on those last few clips with the edge rushers making a speed move on the outside. You're now seeing it with inside moves on the edge. It comes from all angles against Michigan State, and good thing Michigan has both a great exterior and interior pass rush. You're going to see a lot of that. So that's why I don't think Michigan State is just going to sit back and drop back pass against Michigan's great pass rush with Michigan State's iffy pass protection. Michigan State is not going to just bow down to Michigan. They're going to have answers. So what do you do when you struggle to pass protect or you fear another team's pass rush? You screen the crap out of them. And that's exactly what Michigan State does to counter its below average pass protection, and they're pretty darn good at it. They're mostly efficient with halfback screens. And while Michigan did, to an extent, improve defending screens against Washington relative to the USC game, it still gave up a few explosives to Washington, particularly on this halfback screen off a great Texas route. They're going to need to recognize screens early, just like Jay-Sean does on this one here. But Michigan State doesn't just throw halfback screens. They get it out to their tight end. Michigan got hit a few times against Washington on that same concept. And then Michigan State really loves to throw receiver screens on the perimeter over and over again. And this is an interesting one because Michigan's actually done a decent job of defending receiver screens on the perimeter, but it really struggled to defend receiver jailbreak screens against USC, where the offensive line gets out in front and the receiver retraces back underneath the offensive line towards the middle of the field. So if I'm a betting man, I'd expect Michigan State to add that to their already deep repertoire of screens because they already struggle blocking on the perimeter, and the best way to equalize Michigan's really good pass rush is to run halfback screens, wide delay screens, and jailbreak screens. So there is a universe in which I can totally see Michigan State not just staying in this game, but leading in it, especially if they get after Michigan early with two things: screens and shots. Childs has had a history of turning the ball over, but he also has had a history of connecting on shots, which Michigan has ironically also had some problems defending. So if I'm Michigan State, I constantly go with screens and shots, and I live with a couple busted screens, and I even live with an interception here or there, as long as it's an interception that flips field position. But if I'm State, I'm not going to just drop back and likely get behind the sticks and punt over and over again. So for Michigan fans, I would not just expect State to bow down here and play into Michigan's strengths. Jonathan Smith might be coaching for his job here, so they're going to throw anything and everything at Michigan. And as bad as these trick plays were against USC, I'm putting them here to show if they're going to do that against USC, expect at least 3 or 4 trick plays against Michigan. And now when Michigan is on offense, we know that the run game is really good. You can check out the Washington breakdown to see how the boot and play action game is married with the run game. The drop back passing game has grown week to week, and Bryce's decision making is a separator. Even though he is a freshman, he's got the mind of a sophomore or junior. The question marks with Michigan's offense start with its injuries, the availability of Justice Haynes, Marlon Klein, some of the offensive line depth, which has contributed to some of the offensive line inconsistency. And then same thing with wide receiver depth. Only a couple receivers have been consistent, so they're going to need another receiver to step up throughout the remainder of the year. And then Michigan State's defense. Now look, it's not great. They are 119th in the country in third down conversion. They're 92nd in the country in red zone defense, 102nd in passing yards per game, 48th in rushing yards per game. So technically that's their strength, but it's not much of one. They get minimum pressure on the quarterback. They have really bad angles, and then they can be good stopping the run, but they're not great stopping the run against a light box. So with the film, we will start with Michigan State's pass rush. It is not good. They practiced social distancing against Mendoza in this Indiana game. They have really struggled to get home with only 4 pass rushers. Their front 4 are not tremendous getting to the quarterback, so they are going to have to take some risks in this game and bring 5 or more. They cannot allow Bryce to get comfortable in the pocket because, as we all know, Michigan is going to get some yards on the ground. So if they're going to run the ball at will and Bryce is going to have time in the pocket, this could be a very long night for Michigan State's defense because Bryce is already used to making plays under pressure. Now, the second thing that Michigan State has struggled severely with on defense is its angles, aka open space tackling. You can see here the defender is on a bad angle right now. He needs to get positive and track the inside hip, but instead he stays lateral. He allows the ball to cut back inside of him, and it's an explosive play for Indiana. Then it doesn't get much better. On the very next play, different defender, same exact problem. Way too lateral, maybe even negative of an angle, needs to stay positive and track the inside hip. He overruns it and he gets put on skates. And then the front 7 has really struggled to defend the run, specifically against 10 and 11 personnel looks, which Michigan has run a lot more of this year. Michigan State has struggled against pin and pull and duo, 2 staples of Michigan's run game. They've also struggled against split zone. These 2 plays here look very similar. Same thing here against counter. And one of the biggest differences for State fans to understand this year is that Michigan has veered away from that phone booth mentality and has relied a lot more on spreading the defense out to run the ball, and they've mixed in just enough misdirection, end arounds, and quarterback run where linebackers are constantly not knowing what's coming next, and it puts them in conflict, especially once you incorporate the play action game, the boot game, and the RPO game, which are all perfectly married with Michigan's successful run game. Indiana hit on a few RPOs very similarly to the way Michigan's offense has run more and more RPOs the last few games. And the same thing with boot. Indiana scored a touchdown on boot, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. I truly think Michigan has the best boot play action game because of defense's fear of Michigan's run game in combination with Bryce making great throws out of the pocket, matched with that good boot scheme that continues to get slightly more and more developed and complex week to week. So keys to the game, Michigan, when they're on offense, they must continue to run in 10 and 11 personnel looks and be able to pass out of 12 and 13 personnel looks, something they've done very successfully lately. They need to continue to grow the drop back passing game. This should be a good opportunity game to do that and allow Bryce to be a triple threat. By that, I mean make him beat Michigan State with his arm, with his legs, and his mind. So the drop back passing game, the quarterback run game, and allow him to scramble, and then the RPO game and any progression drop back passing game where he is making decisions. He's very good at that. They should keep allowing him to do that and grow more and more. Michigan State, they must take high risks and send 5 or more. They're not going to be able to get home with just 4. They need to mix and disguise 1 and 2 high looks, because if I'm them, I'm expecting a lot of RPO, and in order to stop the run while simultaneously not totally selling out and allowing Bryce to torch me, you're going to have to show 1 and 2 high, mixing it up, showing 1, running the other, and then they're going to have to be very sound, getting off blocks and approaching the ball with correct angles, not giving up explosive plays unnecessarily. And then the other side of the ball, when Michigan State has the ball, they must run Aiden Childs early and often. They're going to have to be pretty good in pass protection, and they have to make up for any pass protection weaknesses with timely screens early and often, and misdirection plays with some trick plays thrown in. They have to keep Michigan on their heels. Michigan's defense must live in 4-man rush. visit simulated pressures and stay away from fire zones. As much as they can only rush for, the better. They have to play with disciplined eyes because, again, Michigan State's going to throw everything at them, and they have to finish on third down and get off the field. They cannot allow Michigan State to have momentum early and often in this game because we've all seen this story before. Michigan goes into the game with the better roster and the better record and the mentality of Michigan State's little brother and how Ohio State's a bigger rivalry. Well, you know what? Even with that analogy, you can't focus on beating your neighbor before you take care of the brother in your own house. So screw that mentality. If this is Michigan State's biggest game of their season, then it has to be Michigan's biggest game of theirs. When you grow up in Michigan, this game is the most personal one. Well, for me, now, maybe Ohio State might be a little more personal, but that's for other reasons, which we can discuss next week. But right now, it's this week, and Michigan State is the most important game of the year. It is the state championship. It's the people you live with. It's to run Paul Bunyan around their field or watch them do it to you. It's the one-tunnel rivalry, and this rivalry is a throw-out-the-records type of game. I don't care what Isaiah Hull says. Love you, Isaiah. But this is the biggest game of the year. With the exception of maybe 2009 through 2014 or so, Michigan has had the more talented roster and lost plenty of times. The 2015 debacle, the 2017 mess, the COVID year, bad showing, the 2021 Kenneth Walker game. Michigan needs to make sure that that's the last one for a very long time, and I'm ending it on this note because if there's ever a game where you need to respect your opponent more than anything, it's this one. And respecting your opponent means recognizing that there are two teams and one winner. And 1 divided by 2 is 50%. So there's only a 50% chance that Michigan wins this game. So screw Vegas, screw ESPN matchup predictors, screw every prediction show on YouTube. I'm not doing a prediction on this game because predictions don't mean crap. And Michigan needs to go into this game expecting a dogfight, and it needs to be ready to answer any and every punch in the mouth from Michigan State and punch right back.